16th, wow.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order now, a couple of minutes late, but we're trying to get a couple online here and they're squared away. We do have a quorum, obviously, so anyway, if you've had the opportunity to look at the agenda, I will ask for a motion for that. But before we do, item 6A has been removed today. So that would be a change in the printed agenda. So if there's no questions on that, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
I move to accept the agenda.
Okay, that was Ann online. And do we have a second?
Second, Kathy Heisey, Callahan.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, I think that was all in favor. Okay, excuse me, losing my voice here. On the consent items that we have, do we have any comments that we need to address before we do move to approval of the minutes from the last meeting? And if not, I'll ask for a motion to accept the minutes if you've all had an opportunity to review those. If not, do that real quick.
Kathy Heisey, I move approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
Welling Clark, El Paso County, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any, Roland, did you have a? Oh, your mic was on. I just wanted. Okay, any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
I'll need to abstain. I wasn't there.
You get that, Jared? Okay. Any opposed? And that passes unanimous with one abstention. Okay, public comments. Do we have anybody in the audience, Jared, that's asked to comment?
So I'll ask anyone in the audience who'd like to make a public comment to please go up to the podium at this time. While we do that, I'll ask anyone online who is not a member to use the raise hand function if they'd like to provide a comment. And while I say all that, we did not receive any advance requests for public comment, and we did not receive any written public comment that we would have distributed to the CAC members beforehand. I don't see anyone at the podium. I don't see any hands raised from non-CAC members. So I believe we're good with public comment. We do have member entity announcements at item 8. That is typically reserved for CAC members, but Mr. Farrell.
I got you down for 2 on 8. Do you have a public one as well, Welling?
Well, this is a public one as a Welling Clark, El Paso County as a citizen. And this is what I want to do as an individual, as a shout out, whether I was on this committee or not. Chris Crockett last month made a good recommendation to add to a process of establishing in the white paper, if something was coming about, how would it affect the goals of PPACG? I got the spelling right. Good. And I just want to say that's a great comment and that is measurable. And I just want to say thank you. I want to give you a shout out for it. And if anybody has anything to improve how we do business, please do not hesitate. I say that as a citizen, as a member of this, and as a former neighborhood president.
Thank you. I appreciate the shout out. It just makes sense to not have a shotgun approach sometimes.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item number 5. Jason, is he with us today? And I want to apologize for cutting you off the last meeting. I know we had a lot of discussion on another topic. It took a lot of time. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And not a big deal. So good afternoon. I'm Jason O'Brien. I'm a transportation planner at PPACG. We're coming into the home stretch on our regional freight mobility study. So we wanted to check in with the CAC one more time before asking for your final recommendation to the board. So a little refresher on the project because it's been a few months. We started working with Cambridge Systematics back in February of this year. We gave a midpoint presentation to this group back in June. So it's not the very first time, but it's been a little while and had some good discussion then. And we'd like to ask for a formal recommendation next month if the group decides to meet then. or just at the next opportunity. So the main reasons for doing a freight study are to stay economically competitive in an age when freight shipping and freight volumes are going up dramatically all the time. It's more important than ever. And it's also to elevate our member government projects when they're competing for grant funds or program funds. So as of now, we've gathered a lot of data. We've conducted a lot of interviews. We've had a public comment period, got some good comments. And as of now, we've completed a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis, or SWOT analysis. And it's interesting stuff. We can talk a little bit about that. And just as an FYI, the study does not assign any specific funds to any specific projects, and it does not get involved in designating local truck routes, because that's a local matter. It's beyond the scope of the study. And with that, I'll turn it over to our Cambridge Systematics project lead, Evan Anderson.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you, committee members. As Jason noted, we've been really having a lot of fun developing this study, really looking at new data, developing new partnerships and connections for PPACG. And we are on the home stretch where we have a draft. We've been working with the board, the technical advisory committee, and this committee as well to vet some of the findings and recommendations, to refine some of the project concepts that are included in here, and really tighten this up so this can be a document that is a resource for all member governments and for PPACG and partners moving forward. So the overall document, which hopefully you've had a chance to flip through now, really kind of opens up with a chapter that describes the existing system and trends and conditions. This is where really there's a lot of new data being presented, both that was purchased directly for the study and leveraged from CDOT and statewide freight planning efforts. So this is really, that first chapter is a really tremendous resource for member governments and our partners to be able to kind of understand what is moving, how and where throughout the region. Our second chapter really kind of dives into doing a little bit of analysis on operational conditions and looking at some of the challenges and barriers to moving freight safely and efficiently throughout the region. So where really are our congestion and our choke points, where some of our safety hazards related to commercial motor vehicle crashes, to rail crashes, what are some of the issues involved in transport of hazardous materials, and really kind of outlining some of those operational needs. And some of that really helps inform some of the future recommendations. As Jason mentioned, we've also got a chapter in here that kind of walks through a little bit of a SWOT analysis. And that SWOT analysis is really based on a lot of conversations we've had with partners throughout the study. So making sure that we were talking to chambers, to business representatives, to freight industry representatives, to our member governments and planners, airports, rail, trucking, and all representatives. And really came out with some very interesting conclusions on that SWOT. It's kind of big picture. Pikes Peak and the Colorado Springs region is really very well positioned to leverage economic development opportunities and really kind of move and make more things throughout the region. There's a lot to offer here in terms of workforce, infrastructure, military connections, and interesting to note that the El Paso County in particular really kind of acts as a hub for all of southern Colorado and into New Mexico and neighboring states when it comes to some of that major fulfillment, distribution, and movement of really kind of key commodities such as motor vehicles, fuel, waste, other things like that. There were a number of weaknesses, primarily what we kind of heard over and over again from businesses operating in the region was the really reliance on I-25 for key north-south movements. When that is affected by operational closures, that can really severely impact very tight delivery windows and really kind of helping keep stores and their shelves stocked. So being able to look at opportunities to really improve some of the major strategic improvements that are already underway in the region, primarily the Southern Colorado Rail Park, being able to leverage the airport, some of the foreign trade zones around there, some of the new industrial development, and then really kind of build out the network. So looking at, opportunities to increase east-west capacity to address some of the safety and operational analyses. We heard a few threats. I think the one to really kind of call out here is related to Fort Carson and how important things like the Southern Colorado Rail Park, some of the work and the infrastructure projects that CDOT is moving forward with military access, and then really kind of looking at how we can really strengthen redundant routes for Fort Carson so that it remains a key strategic national resource. That was really all the first couple chapters of this are really based on that analysis, conversations with stakeholders. We then moved forward and really kind of built out a regional kind of vision freight network for the region, really looking at some of the key corridors that are very vital. And this is, again, kind of a vision network. This is to say that this can really guide a lot of our future planning efforts. When we say this is part of the freight vision network, maybe that's a trigger for that we need to kind of start thinking about freight and planning improvements along those corridors, or to be very targeted and focused when we're looking at future grant opportunities or future projects so that they address some of the needs that have been developed. That we also developed a list of future project concepts. This is really kind of come at the recommendation of stakeholders, member governments, and then through analysis of the data where some of those key operational bottlenecks, safety, and other corridor improvements are really needed overall. These are, again, kind of concepts that really can be developed through future planning work, and then serve as an opportunity to kind of springboard into capturing federal grants and looking at really improving that resiliency, redundancy, and safety of the freight transport system. And we close out the study with some really kind of key policy recommendations. There's some really great ideas related to continuing the partnerships with stakeholders that have been built through the study, even so much as kind of standing up a little bit of a freight working group for maybe any committee members, member governments, private business stakeholders. They really kind of want to meet on an informal basis and help PPACG develop responsive plans and policies and future initiatives that can really help address the freight industry in particular. There's also some real opportunities to kind of look at some targeted freight planning needs, continuing the work of this study into a full-blown plan, really maybe diving into some detail on where truck parking needs or highway safety needs are really most needed overall. And of course, we can't do much of this without funding. So making sure that we're really, as a region, looking at public-private partnerships and opportunities, making sure that we're looking at the very significant amount of federal funding that is available in competitive grant programs, specifically to target rail and highway freight improvements overall. So that was the study at a glance. I think our next steps are really to continue our public process, making sure that we're being responsive to comments received. We're doing a little bit more engagement and outreach specifically to try and reach truck drivers. And then looking to integrate comments from the board and the committee, and with your recommendation, publish this study document in the spring of next year. Certainly entertain any questions, or we can flip back to the document with any specifics.
Just one question. This is Ed Dills. Do you get into the aspect of emissions or any of that at all, or is this strictly travel and strictly corridor?
It's tends to be more strictly corridor and looking at how things and where things are moving. We certainly note where there are community impacts of freight, particularly as we're seeing growth in new areas that might be growing into traditionally industrial areas or mixed use development going in near rail and corridors overall. So we note that air quality and emissions as a operational analysis, but that's about it.
Okay. Go ahead.
Judith Rice-Jones from the League. This is a topic that I have to say was totally new to me, so my question might not be appropriate. But I remember that something we'd all lobbied for a long time, which was to have public transportation to the airport. Citizens never succeeded, but what succeeded was Amazon, who wanted to build a fulfillment center and required that there be public transit. So the citizens weren't listened to, but Amazon was. Is there any way that we can use freight facilities that want to come here to get other likewise amenities? I'm thinking like an eastern connection to I-25 that people have wanted to have for decades, and it seems to be very slow to get moving. Would that be a reasonable thing that would be greatly advantageous to the freight companies, but would also be a huge boon for our community?
I think I'll respond to the first part of your question, then I'll throw the second part to Evan. Well, it's a new topic for the region. Just, the first thing you said, I think it's appropriate, but so far, region-wide or among any of the member governments, there hasn't been any kind of freight analysis, freight plan, freight study. It's completely new. So, which is why it's a study and not a plan. Just sort of looking at existing conditions and an analysis of strengths and weaknesses and so forth. But I'm gonna see if Evan wants to take a shot at answering the second part of your question.
Certainly, and I think it's a interesting premise in a little bit of a chicken or egg thing. There's a lot of strengths going for the region and looking to kind of reattract major manufacturing, distribution, and fulfillment. Strong workforce, the military connections, a very significant growth in future population and employment. And so while there's a kind of regional strengths and a competitive advantage to locating in Colorado Springs and Pikes Peak now, without some of those kind of key east-west connections or improvements to corridors, that may not always be the case. And so I think it's important to continue to kind of coalesce around regional priorities, look at some of the long-range planning efforts that PPACG is leading, and then looking at what opportunities there might exist to work with business to make some of those major priorities happen.
Got a quick question. Earlier in your statement, you mentioned Fort Carson specifically as it pertains to rail. My question is, looking at the 4 other installations, is there any capture within your analysis of any impacts to freight dealing with the growth of a lot of those institutions and going in and out throughout the region as we continue to grow?
The study brushes on the other institutions, but we focused on Fort Carson just because of the volume of freight and deployment and just everything that goes on in Fort Carson is many, many times larger than any of the other military operations in town. But Evan, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, there certainly are very significant installations throughout the region. They are all, communities into themselves and do transport a lot of personnel, consumer goods, fuel, oils, all sorts of things. But Fort Carson, again, is kind of a different level and a magnitude in that role in the national deployment network. So their ability to move major equipment very quickly in the case of national emergencies or a declaration of war. That's why their rail access is so important. And the ability to develop that Southern Colorado Rail Park and have a secondary rail spur is very critical, so they can move north, south, east, west. PPACG has the opportunity to participate in some DoD planning work now to look at Fort Carson and their deployment routes nationally.
Another little tidbit on that is, so we want Fort Carson to be an effective military post, but we also want to make sure there's no real vulnerabilities to base realignment and closures when the next round of that comes. So, and that lack of redundancy is a significant issue.
Welling Clark, El Paso County. For the clarification of the CAC as a whole, the way I read this document is a compilation of data to assist individuals and government entities in the future on making decisions, saying, here's where the freight is, here's where it goes, and things of that nature. So it's kind of along those lines. I would be curious in a couple of aspects of questions. Of one is, who uses this data? Is it PPACG alone? Would you work individually with other entities as well? And then along those lines, would Do you provide recommendations with what you see and growth? And have you worked with the entities like the Amazon Distribution Center and other centers? It took 2 to 5 years to get that distribution center out here, and planning was going on. Are you hooked in, like I'll say with, and I'm going to probably butcher the terminology, like with city council and other local governments that control industrial parks and things of that for improvements on road systems, like what was mentioned about it, East I-25 equivalent or something like that, so we improve redundancy in case one road system has a failure, but we do not then establish gridlock.
Yeah, a few questions there. Let me know if I'm missing anything. Last point first, there are recommendations in the study to include projects that would provide north-south redundancy. And then it also does call attention to the east-west connectivity problems. And we've got some facts and figures about that. In terms of users of the study, I would say both. PPACG would use it as something to feed our other planning efforts, like our long-range transportation plan. But one of the main reasons we had for starting the study is that we do occasionally get requests from our member towns and cities and counties for support in doing freight-related projects like the Southern Colorado Rail Park. And at the time, without any kind of organized freight-related effort, we weren't able to provide it. So this is us just kind of step up and be able to have those resources for our member governments when they're going out to pursue outside funding, like grants or if they're in program prioritizations at the state or the federal level. And we did actually have a conversation. We interviewed someone high up at Amazon about their facility and their needs, and they had a concern about confidentiality. So there's not a great deal in there about it, but we did talk with them. We also worked with pretty closely with the Chamber and EDC because it's sort of an economic development oriented document. We interviewed many of our member government staff, private freight shippers. When we could get a hold of them, that was a little bit tough. We got a hold of a few through the Colorado Motor Carriers Association. So we did some interviews there. So there's quite a bit of that in the study. Anything to add, Evan?
I think that was great, Jason.
No, that's great, because what that tells me, it's not a silo effect. It's a broad brush, bringing everyone together in a weave. Thank you.
That's the goal. Yeah, appreciate the questions.
Got one.
Go ahead, Chris.
Chris Crockett from Kono. I don't know how big the region is, but does the accident in Pueblo that knocked out the rail line that crossed over I-25, does that, I know you started this a long time ago before that happened, does that accident impact this study greatly? Or is it outside of our region? Or
it's outside of our planning region specifically, which ends sort of in South El Paso County and City of Fountain. But a lot of folks have told us, like the Southern Colorado Rail Park Initiative, they do work cooperatively with Pueblo, not competitively. So it's of interest, but I don't think so. Evan, am I right about that?
Yes, correct on the region, and I think very important point on the collaborative relationship and the connections between Pikes Peak and Pueblo. In terms of the national rail network, where that accident occurred, well, one, it showcases that when rail accidents are less frequent than highway transport, but they tend to be a different scale. And then second, where that accident did occur, there was actually 2 main lines there. And so I don't think the national rail network has been affected, but it again highlights the importance of freight.
okay, thank you. And then I've got one more, but go ahead. My second question was on your SWOT analysis. You said that one of the threats was a currently limited infrastructure to the Pikes Peak Innovation Park, I think. I'm asking you to look into your crystal ball a little bit, but do you expect that to change? When it says currently, it makes me think maybe you're expecting a change.
Are you referring to the lack of rail-served industrial park and rail access, or?
It's a threat. I think it might have been the third threat bullet. Yeah, third threat bullet.
Yeah, we heard some interesting comments about there's certainly areas to the east that are growing out significantly, but maybe in terms of warehousing and distribution, there might be some some limits there, or we might reach our limit in being able to move goods in and out of those areas without, new kind of capacity and operational improvements to make connections out to 287 or 285 and the ports to plains corridors and access to Texas and others. I would hope that will, change over time as that area continues to develop, but it could be a threat or a constraint on growth out there.
Kathy Heisey, my question is, will this document be updated at certain periods of time to reflect, for instance, the improvements that have been completed at Highway 85 by Fort Carson's Gate 19? Or is this a snapshot in time type of a study that would stay, everything in it stays in place and not being updated as improvements are made?
I can give sort of a 50-50 answer. So it's not scheduled for any sort of regular or routine update, but there is potential for doing, so this is a study for doing a freight plan in a few years, maybe sooner. And as opposed to a study, the plan would go into more detail. It would probably do more like assigning priority to different projects, solidifying some of these priority corridors, and maybe doing a little bit of prioritization. So maybe a little bit of a tougher project, but it's everything we do in that direction towards saying that this is our regional priority. It strengthens our member government's grant applications for those projects, or it strengthens them in their state or federal prioritization processes when they want to go out and get funds. So we have one more thing, the plan potentially scheduled. So depending on level of interest, if our board wants to do it, if our CAC and our TAC are interested, so. Thank you.
Jason, I might just tack onto that and say the State Department of Transportation is required to update their statewide freight plan every 4 years. And so that provides an opportunity for PPACG to coordinate with the state to refresh some of that data without the need for additional support.
When was their last update?
It's ongoing now. It'll be published around the same time as this study, so spring of 24.
Okay. Anyone else? Hey.
This is Ann up in
Oh,
Green
Ann,
Mountain.
go ahead. I didn't see. I'm sorry.
I didn't raise my hand, sorry. I'm so old. I remember when the train came up through the mountains. And of course, it's so narrow, all Highway 24 and all. And it's really, east-west, it's pretty important. Not only for freight and everything, but national defense and so on. And I just, I wonder, do you consider all of that too? Just the importance of getting through the mountains. I'm sure you do, but I just would like to stress that because I've noticed a big problem.
Absolutely. And as the region continues to grow in population and jobs, that really will mean more trucks and trains moving on a daily basis to more locations. And we do kind of highlight 24 and a lot of the corridors to the east in that future vision network and future project concepts where there are significant need for corridor improvements to make those safer for trucks and really all vehicles overall.
Yeah, Evan, I think she's specifically looking at Highway 24 up around Woodland Park, Green Mountain Falls.
Well, there and Woodland Park and beyond, goes up, it goes through South Park and all that. That's pretty wide open. But I know that the Woodland Park is trying to consider a traffic reliever, kind of, another road that goes around that town. Just so people can get around it, or trucks or whatever our nation might need. So I realize that's a real complicated little area, but I just wanted to speak up for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Judith.
another senior comment. I've lived in Colorado Springs for 50 years, coming first to Colorado College and going away, coming back. And one of the things I participated in, I didn't see it in your bibliography. I didn't see a bibliography, but in the 1990s, Val Viers, a physics professor at Colorado College, led a team of us called Transportation Concepts 2000. We were very concerned about I-25, and I meant to go back and look in the index, but there were quite a few accidents in I-25, pretty major ones where people were killed and stuff fled out of the trucks. So there's a real concern about its proximity to Monument Creek. And we were particularly concerned about not having it widened because it was a highway that split the city. And I can give you a list of major cities across the United States that are taking down those kinds of interstate cities that divided communities. So we started a group that has never formally been organized called When I-25 Comes Down, and talk about all the major advantages it would be to the community if that ever happened. I'm not sure that it will, probably not in my lifetime. But I remember that there was quite a concern about the number of accidents, and especially with trucks that were on the freeway and the proximity to Monument Creek, which we already are paying $50 million for all of the bad stuff that goes into Monument Creek. So I'm wondering to what degree you looked at that accident issue with the freeway that goes along a waterway. And especially given that we recently there's been a lot of discussion about a proposal to ship oil from Utah down to the Gulf, but through Colorado and along the Colorado River, which I know almost every environmental group in the state has opposed. So I'm wondering what the proximity to the waterway, the fact that it divides the community, if those played any role in your study.
I don't think we touched on that specific issue, although we did talk to a couple of folks from the state patrol and local fire departments about hazardous materials issues as a public safety issue generally. But maybe we can include a comment or remark in the study about the proximity issue with hazardous materials.
I think
and
that's very
make a little addition there. Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? And I see no one online. Jason, are you looking for a recommendation today, or do you want to wait to pass this on to the board?
Good question. We thought about both, and I honestly wasn't sure whether the CAC was going to decide to meet in December. So we're prepared to ask today in that event.
Danelle, are we in a position where we can proceed if the CAC wants to?
Jared might need to correct me.
I know it wasn't on the agenda, so.
It wasn't on the agenda specifically as an action item. So I'm not sure that we can take action on it.
We'll have to wait till next month. We'll meet in December, so.
So I can provide a little bit of context there. So on the whether we can or can't, it was properly noticed that we would discuss this, and case law does support that as long as the public had an understanding that it was discussed, that if you wanted to take action, you could. That being said, this won't be going to the board until January. This would give you guys the opportunity in December, any final edits that come in through trucker surveys and the public comment period just wrapped up. So there's not the urgency, so to speak.
Okay, just wanted to be sure.
Thank you, Jared.
And I would never dare correct a no.
Thanks for the question. No.
Well, I was curious. It sounds like a lot of us are interested in this, but anyway, we will proceed on in December, and Danelle will have it on our agenda.
Great. Thanks very much for the discussion. Good questions. Any other last remarks, Evan?
Nope. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
So since the microphone isn't near John, so going into the December meeting, if you guys are comfortable, this could be a consent item. So I don't want to speak for Jason, but I don't anticipate there's going to be a lot of changes between now and whenever it's finalized.
There won't be any substantive changes, just minor details.
So with that, we can put on the consent items.
Yeah, I think it'd be pertinent to explain consent items so everybody's clear on that.
Okay, so the consent agenda, it's typically used as a way to put items on that need approval but aren't considered controversial. So for example, like we always have the minutes, and I'll scroll up so everyone can see, but the minutes are part of the consent agenda. We would just add this as 3B. So for example, the board, the financial reports are part of the consent agenda along with membership appointments, minutes, a couple other things that are just typically customary that the board, it does not consider controversial, but at the same time, if someone wants to pull it off, they have the obligation, and anyone can pull it off at their request.
Okay. Well, part of my thought process, moving it up as a consent item today, is next month, December, we have the holidays. I want to make sure we have a quorum when we take a vote. We're looking good on that today. So at this point, I think I'd leave it up to the members of the CAC if you have any recommendations or comments. Chris, did you have your hand up?
I do. Chris Crockett with Kono. I guess my one concern would be putting it onto a consent agenda when Jason, is it Jason, right, has told us that they might consider adding a comment related to proximity issues. I feel like if it's a consent item, it should be straight up as opposed to something with changes.
Okay.
I don't mind addressing changes once we see
Good
the
point.
update, but
Good point.
We're comfortable either way.
Okay, it's any other comments or discussion on it?
Just want to say it sounds, in Clark, El Paso County, sounds like a lot of the heavy lifting on this document discussion all has been done. The fine tuning is what was requested, and then I think it'll be expedited process.
Yeah, we're not
Thank you.
expecting any substantive changes. I mean, we would have wanted to do anything like that before our public comment period anyway. So it'll be just, bug check pretty much and final details.
Which we expect that to be ongoing anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we'll add that to an action item and see if we have anybody that's interested in pursuing that. Okay, moving on. We do not have 6A, as we've already discussed.
They make a comment on 6A.
Yes.
6A, if you haven't looked at it, page 20, I want to do a shout out to Silver Key. They actually did a cost analysis per trip. And from 2021 to 2023, it went up 2.5% total cost, when inflation was over 15%. So they're trying to keep their costs in check. Based on that data, that is what I would love to see all organizations strive for, to be more efficient in this time of economic trying, for lack of a better terminology. But if you haven't seen that, take a look at that page.
Page 20. Okay, Jess.
Yes. Good afternoon, CAC members. I'm Jess Bechtel, tip planner for PPACG, and the item I have for you today for your review and a recommendation is the CDOT Region 2 request to add RPP, or Regional Priority Project funding, to fiscal year 2028. Usually this would come through as a tip amendment that you would see and be able to approve and such. But our current tip only covers through year 27 at the moment. And so this is outside of our current document, but is required in CDOT's process to move forward with a concurrence from the board. And what that does is just adds funding that's listed out here in this memo, as well as their spreadsheet of their 9-year plan that was included in your packet. So what we're asking for today is a recommendation, once you've reviewed, of the funding for fiscal year 28. So that's there for you to see. Any questions that I can answer, I'll do my best. And I also have CDOT on the line, and in the audience here, I have John Hall. Did you have anything else you wanted to discuss about RPP? No? Questions? Regional Priority Program, flexible funding. RPP. So again, this is John Hall with CDOT, in case you guys had any further questions. But other than that, we're just looking for a recommendation to bring this to the board to add it into our program.
flowing.
Nobody has questions?
Nobody has questions.
That's good.
Just for clarification on, US 24 West over Ridge Road, $1 million, added on for, continued final design and all. That's for the intersection that's going to do a overpass of Ridge Road. And I know in the past there was controversy of whether there's on-off ramps and not. Will public process for the entities that live in that area of the city and the county, Manitou Springs and Colorado Springs, be involved in that design? It's more of a citizen type of an input question.
Well, we'll certainly have public outreach.
Okay, good.
It's important to say, though, that as far as the funding and stuff is concerned on this 10-year capital plan project,
Mhm.
which has, I believe, $33 million fiscal year 27 plus 10-year plan funding coming from CDOT, right? The SB1 and SB 67, 160, and all those fund sources. The scope of the project is an overpass. It is not to put ramps in. The environmental.
No interchange then.
There's not going to be, yeah, the scope of the project is not for an interchange right now with the funding available. It's, and the environmental assessment was pretty clear about, the breakdown of responsibility, if you will, for at least our understanding of the way the environmental assessment is that, it's, CDOT is going to build an overpass, and then it is the local agencies, large responsibility to, it's, outside of CDOT, if a future development adds ramps and stuff like that to turn it into an interchange.
And this is for the edification of the CAC per se. In the past, one of the concerns cited by residents about, this is about 10 to 15 years ago, was if there's only an overpass there and there's no on-off Ridge Road, that's going to put burden on 31st Street and also into Manitou Springs. And they were worried about those increasing traffic, I'll say, in a choke point type of area, as well as emergency response into the parks if there was a hiking accident or something like that. That's the reason I asked that question initially. Okay, no, but you answered my question. Thank you.
I think those are good considerations, and certainly things with other funding sources as well for 31st and all.
So there we go. So off ramps could be added later on.
Yeah, there's certainly sufficient room, and the way we would design it certainly wouldn't. in
But
any
it would
way
probably be a
preclude
number
that.
of years down the road. It'd
Another-
be a number of years down the road after the overpass. is
Yeah,
done.
it would, I mean.
Yeah.
Whenever funding was determined, it could be months later if there was funding, but I mean, that's probably pretty far-fetched.
The minimum funding, I understand, is just to do a straight overpass per se. And if you start doing on-off ramps, that adds to the cost. And that's what was the limiting factor in this. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, but there's also just other environmental impacts, right-of-way impacts, the trail, Midland Trail through there and all. So there's a lot of other impacts to, that have to be addressed. Midland Trail has to be addressed anyways too.
Oh, yeah, I know.
But, but
Judith.
I apologize for a very perhaps peripheral issue, but my colleagues in Boulder give me a really hard time that we do not have any pollinator highway in our CDOT district. Is there any thought about, in terms of landscaping, looking long term, to do something that emulates I-76 near Boulder? There are a lot of groups right now, Waterwise Colorado, looking at making Colorado look more like Colorado and less like Ohio by choosing native plants. Is really important for looking at water in the future. And I think the project in Boulder, I can't remember which CDOT region that is, has been wildly successful. And I'm just wondering if that's even a discussion item in our region.
well, you mentioned 76 and then Boulder, so I'm not sure.
I'm not sure where they connect.
30,
So,
yeah.
I might be getting my number
It's
wrong.
east, 36 goes up
Yeah.
to down. I'm unfamiliar with, well, I know this from all of our projects have seed mixes and stuff like that. Our environmental staff is is heavily involved in, determining those mixed designs so that they get native vegetation and all that. To be completely honest, I'm not prepared to brief you on, I'd have to talk with them to find out a little more about how they pick, I tend to focus on just the roadway aspect of it, but it is definitely a consideration. It's definitely something with the seed mixes and stuff like that. I can't tell you that there's a specific project though right in mind right now where we're like specifically designing any medians,
It's not specifically medians. It's more frequently along the roadway, but it's gotten national attention.
Yeah.
So, you could probably find out from them how they did it, but
Yeah.
it's.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely,
Thank you.
we'll gladly pass it on to our
Thank you.
environmental staff to look at a little more too. It's, to be honest, a dumb roadway engineer would be a bad choice of somebody. It'd take me a long time to research, but I'm quite sure our environmental staff is on it, and I'll pass it on to Rob Fry. and
They
stuff.
have a wonderful film. I mean, they're really proud of it. So
Yeah.
I can find it online.
We definitely take seriously trying to get growth and stuff on our highways. And I think we do a pretty good job of it actually around here. And I'll certainly tell you that I believe, it's native and a lot of flowering vegetation. I don't know whether it fully meets what you're discussing about the pollinator that,
We'll look at it because it's gotten a lot of
Yeah,
attention. Thank you.
definitely. Thank you.
Anyone else? And no one other. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Anything else, Jess?
Nope, just a recommendation if you guys are happy with adding this funding.
Is anyone ready to do a motion?
This is Miley Foster, El Paso County. Beat you to it.
That's hard to do.
I know. I recommend approval of the RPP funds for allocation in fiscal year 2028 tip to be included when the document is developed.
Kathy,
Roland
I see
Rainey at
second.
large, second.
Oh.
Oh, we did it at the same time. Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion, comments? Yeah, they're ahead of you.
That's good.
Okay, hearing no additional discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Jess, you passed. Danelle, your turn.
Good afternoon. So we have two at-large community advisory committee members who are at the end of their first term. Per our CAC bylaws, folks are allowed to serve a second term consecutively. And both Paul Wiggins and Gary Sugart have expressed being interested in remaining on the CAC. So what we're looking for today is a formal recommendation from the CAC to either approve those current at-large seats for a second term or choose to advertise those vacancies and fill those by a nomination process.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Tony
Welcome.
Sultana, El Paso County, I recommend them to stay on.
Terry Hayes, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion, comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's passed unanimous.
And thank you to both of those members for volunteering to stay on our CAC. And
Yes, thank you very much. Danelle, you're up again.
yes, one other housekeeping item. So our officers here for all of our committees, I believe, including our CAC, hold 1-year offices beginning on January 1st of each year. And so we are in the position now where we need to either nominate and elect today or do some thinking and potentially do that in December. All of the voting members are eligible for any of the officer positions, and you may also serve 2 consecutive terms in your office. So Mr. Ed Dills and Mr. Welling Clark can remain as chair and vice first chair if they are willing and if the CAC approves that. Terry Hayes, unfortunately, is not able to extend for another year because her last term is ending just tomorrow, actually.
It's
So-
so sad.
She said it was a get out of jail card.
So what we're looking for today from the members is just to discuss who you would like to be your officers for the coming year. Are you ready to vote on that today? We can take nominations from the floor, or we can also table it to next month if you'd like. And again, we do sometimes have quorum issues in December with the holidays, but if we can get it done today, that would be great.
She's running
Hi,
it right now.
Hi, this is Tani Sultan, El Paso County. I think both Clark and Ed has been doing a great job. I have no problem if either of them, not forcefully, but voluntarily staying or willing to stay. I have no issues with that.
This is Miley Foster, El Paso. That was my question too. I am assuming that you two would like to stay on.
I would say if the CAC wants us on board, I think we would be honored to do it. If not, we would be glad to step down.
I was gonna say, if you want me to do it another year, definitely be honored.
In Clark, El Paso County, I think Ed Dills has done a dynamite job running meetings, being very cordial and making things work and staying on time.
So that means we're really maybe just looking for someone, just one replacement. The second vice chair is all we need. So do we have any volunteers?
May I ask a question? Did Tony make a motion and did you get a second on it? Since I'm not running it.
Tunisia,
I'll second it.
are you
If it-
formally making a motion?
Yes, ma'am. I will formally make a motion to continue with Clark Wallings and Ed Deals to stay as our officers.
Thank you.
I'll second it. This is Ann in Green Mountain Falls.
Routine.
And I believe, Jared, since that's a motion, we have to formally vote on that motion and then fill the next.
We do, and this, as you kind of mentioned, there's a million different ways we could possibly do this. So this is obviously one way. And then we just have a separate motion for the second vice chair. So, but we do have a motion on the floor.
Any discussion on that motion at this time? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Walling's gonna love it. We've got a lot for him to do this year.
Do we have any volunteers or nominations for that second vice chair seat?
I will say, don't be afraid of it. I never once had to step in and run a meeting.
You did great then.
Great.
In Clark, El Paso County, I would just recommend that if anybody would like to become involved, it's not that hard, but to definitely step forward so you can provide a continuity of purpose if something happens later on. And I know I've talked when I've met people and bumped into them in a friendly way, okay, about that, to be more involved in PPACG. So if anybody would be of interest, I would strongly recommend, please push a button and say you would be interested in being second vice chair.
Is it legal for me to volunteer since I've been chair before? I don't know what the rules.
No, you have been out of your chair role and you also haven't served as second vice chair, so you would absolutely be.
I'll volunteer. My thought was because my office is right down the street, it would be some weird, unusual thing. If I did have to step up, it would be quick and easy for me to do.
Perfect.
Is that a motion?
Is it a snowstorm?
As in a snowstorm.
That was a self-nomination, correct? Somebody, did I hear?
I'll second.
Danelle, are you still running this?
Cats are out.
I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm butting in.
No,
where I
that's
don't belong.
okay. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any any opposed? All right. Thank you very much for
Your
for
knowledge and
volunteering.
expertise will be appreciated.
Good.
Okay, is that all you have, Danelle?
That's all I have for that item.
That's not enough for you. Okay, information item, Jessica.
Yes, hi there, me again, Jess Bechtel. So the item that I have for you for information today is a review of the TIP document process and schedule. I'm currently working on the new, we just finished developing it actually, FY 25-29 draft transportation improvement program document. And if you're unfamiliar with what that is, it's the 4-year plan that implements the long-range regional transportation plan's goals and identifies the specific transportation and transit projects for which the region allocates the federal, state, and local funds. PPACG oversees the TIPS development and amends as conditions change. So again, we do a new one every 2 years. We're working on that process now. And so that's what this is doing, is providing you a first chance look at the content. I'll be coming back in December for an actual recommendation of the draft document and hoping that you'll provide me any guidance, any recommendations, and opening it for public release. So I brought it to you this month so that way you can familiarize yourself with all 143 pages. And provide any insight that you might need or any questions, anything that I can answer about the document itself. The new projects were added and embedded into the overall list that you see in this document. I can send that to you afterwards, separate of just what's been added. If you are wanting to see that, it's that much more information and numbers and such, but it is available to you. This incorporates everything that you would be adopting into the new TIP plan though. So just wanted to bring that to you, make sure everyone has an understanding of what this document does, the importance of it in the transportation planning process, and making you aware of our schedule. It is a little bit tight. We're looking for board approval and recommendation so that we can get it up to CDOT and implemented in time for it to basically go live in August. So that's what this is, and I am here for any questions. If you have.
It's not too hard if you could separate the new items out.
Absolutely. I have that available. I can follow up and send that
Yeah,
to you guys today.
That'd be beneficial. 'Cause
Mhm.
I'm familiar with most of the old things, but to see the new.
Most of the projects that we received in during this most recent call for projects to allocate this new round of funding for are cost overruns, so existing projects that are just receiving more funding in future years. There were a couple of new projects. There were some healthcare service providers that put in for funds this year, such as Pike Ride and things like that, and MMT and Vita. They all received funding. And so every project that put in for funds this time received either full or partial funding. So I'll send you guys that list because it's nice to see it separated out on top of what is already moving over from the old TIP into the new TIP.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And then if you have any recommendations, anything else you see, if you actually had time to sift through the giant document, please email me back, send it my way. I want to get it as, full and clean as I can before I take it to board. So.
Pike Ride.
Pike Ride, yes.
I just wanted to make a comment of 3 or 4 years ago, I attended the statewide Colorado Native Plant Association's annual meeting in Fort Collins. And one of the things I noticed right away is they have an equivalent of Pike Ride that's more obvious. I think they have more facilities. But the first thing I noticed is they have 3-wheeled bikes. And they were partially funded by Kaiser, and they're really compact 3-wheel bikes. I discovered that when one gets older, one can, with some dignity, ride a 3-wheel bike, but one cannot with dignity ride an adult tricycle. So I'm very fond of 3-wheel three-wheeled bicycles. And when I came back, I immediately called Pike Ride and they said, we don't have those because we're providing bikes for active people. And right away I thought, I'm going to call Innovations in Aging and we're going to do a lawsuit because I thought that was just incredible. But I have asked over and over again and they've changed leadership. And I really consider that an equality issue. So I hope that you'll take that under consideration in terms of you're going to give funding to Pike Ride. It has to be Pike Ride for everyone in Colorado Springs and not specifically not for three-wheeled bicycles for older people.
Sure, that's an interesting point. I'd be happy to include that.
I was
Send it
really,
over to Pike.
I was really quite amazed because I did look beyond Fort Collins and it's fairly common.
Yeah.
I think one of the first answers I was given is our supplier doesn't have those. And it's like, well, there is more than one supplier. This is a very fast growing industry. So I was disappointed. And in Fort Collins, I went back and checked and they actually got funding from Kaiser, but Pike Ride was not willing to ask
Yes.
Kaiser.
Judith, kind of a side comment, Teresa Odello with El Paso County Park and Rec, they're pursuing getting a couple of those for Bear Creek Park. And I'm not sure where that stands exactly, but that is something that's been worked on.
Well, I don't think it should be just specifically for a park. I think
No,
it should
but
be.
I
think
mean,
it'd be- yeah, thank
once you get the
Yeah,
ball
right,
rolling,
right,
and
right,
people see
right.
them, they're going to ask for
It
more.
is common. It's common. My daughter lives in California. It's
Yes.
common in Sonoma and in Marin County.
Certainly
So-
makes sense. Yeah.
So let's not do something that doesn't treat everyone equally.
Sure. Yeah,
you.
I'm happy to pass that comment along.
Okay, well,
Well, in Clark, El Paso County, given this past discussion, what would be the best way for people to provide input, like what was just mentioned on different concepts to you?
Sure. So I'll follow up and send you the list today, either through Danelle or myself, and make sure that you received a separated out list so you can see what the TAC recommended for funding separate, and then you can just respond to me via email. And again, you'll see it come through again for public comment if it's in regard to the TIP document itself, but then anything like that we receive in regard to projects and the funding. Yeah, go
So
ahead. and send
basically send you information.
Yeah,
Good.
send it to me and
One recommendation I would recommend, when I first came on this committee, 2 months into it, we had a CDOT tip change.
Mhm.
They increased the cost by 2,200% and did not change the scope of the project.
Sure.
So we asked what happened and they didn't adjust it. So if there's any changes in the tip that increase costs or something, I would just recommend from a citizen standpoint, see if you could put in justification. Why did the cost increase? We're now doing acquisition. We're now doing this or that.
Sure, that makes sense.
Because when I talked to my county commissioners, they said, if you approved a project that increased by 2,000% with no change in scope, we'd be talking to you.
Right, right.
Okay, no, thank
That
you.
makes sense. We'll make sure to bring you.
we have 2
project details.
questions online. Gary, if you want to go first.
Yes, as I reviewed that 143-page document, I did not see the Powers Highway 21 airport overpass. Has that been dropped or did I miss it?
Powers and Airport?
Correct. That's outside of Peterson Space Force Base. That had been in the plans for a number of years, and I didn't see it in this tip.
You are correct. Let me take a look at that.
One moment, we'll dig in and see some. CDOT's coming to the podium to assist. Hi, John.
I would need to confirm to be 100% sure, but I believe 100% of the funding is fiscal year 24 for that project. So we're
So if it was
basically,
in
we're
24,
basically
it
on the
wouldn't roll
final.
forward. Yeah.
We budgeted $49 million. We're in the final stages of, I think, a tip amendment with you guys actually to get another, it's like $5-6 million to get us to where we can advertise the project, all 24 though.
Thank you, John. So those projects with fiscal year 24 funding won't fall into this tip until at the end of the fiscal 2024 year, if there's still funding that hasn't yet been obligated, which basically means they haven't put out a contract for that funding, it'll roll over into fiscal year 25, and then it will become a part of this tip. That makes sense.
That does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Tony, you have a question, I believe, online.
Yes, so it's not question, but more for awareness. The bike versus trike, the cost differentiate is 300%. So an average bike costs $100 versus trikes cost $300. Just for awareness.
So the adoption schedule for the TIP is listed in this memo. And so as I said before, I'll be bringing it back to you in December for actual approval or recommendation to send it to the board and open up the public comment period. So
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Moving on to member announcements. What I'd like to do is thank Roy and Terry, especially for what you've done the last 6 years, and give you a minute to comment if you have anything you'd like to say.
Roy Rosenthal, Manitou Springs. Last time I'm going to say that. Well, I just want to say quick goodbye to everybody. 6 years goes by quickly. I feel like I've contributed a little and learned a lot, and I'd recommend the experience to anybody.
Ah, that's nice.
We thank you for being here, Roy.
Terry Hayes Monument. Last time I'll say that. It has been fun. I run the Tri Lakes Chamber up there, and so a lot of this stuff has helped me be more knowledgeable to help our community in a lot of things they don't understand. And a lot of the surveys, a lot of the public outreach that you guys do here, I don't think sometimes the outlying areas see it as much as they should. So I know I personally was able to push stuff out. So probably my question going forward is, how does someone like me and Eastern Plains Chamber and Fountain Chamber and all the others, I don't know how much you guys push out to all of those people to help get the surveys and get everything. Because I think in the 6 years I've been doing this, the constant question I always hear is, how come there's not more people to participate in the surveys or give out their thoughts or whatever? So I just think maybe there are some ways to help do that. And now that I'm going to be off, I'm going to ask Danelle later, how do I still get in, keep informed about this so I can still push this stuff out, but not just me, it's all the other surrounding communities. It's reminding everybody we aren't just Colorado Springs. So I've thoroughly enjoyed this. Like I said, I've learned so much. I haven't seen a lot of you in the last year and a half because I'm mostly online because it's so convenient now. I don't have to drive down from Monument. Today I had a meeting right before this, so I thought,
yeah, I didn't recognize you when you.
I know, but I've been to every meeting, so it's just been great. And I don't have a replacement yet. I don't think you guys do either, maybe, but I'm working on getting them to get one. So hopefully we'll have someone else here because I don't think there's anybody else. Palmer Lake has one, but I don't think she's attended, and I don't know that NEPCO's even still coming. Are they?
They have a member, but we haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah, so I need to get on both those people. So, because it's the only way to have all the communities represented. So I appreciate all of you guys from all the communities, and I've learned a lot from all the other communities. So it's just been a great time, and I enjoy it. And I'm getting off this board, and I got on 2 more already. So.
Well, I will add a comment to you and Roy both. We do have the public comment presentation, and we'd be glad to have you interject if you have something to say online, whatever. But thank you again. Okay, Welling, I think you had something you asked about on the announcement.
Welling Clark, El Paso County, he's picking on me, but no, this is something to the CAC. A lot of things we do, and this is just my perception, I want to bounce it off to you. I think this is a good idea. I've talked to Ed and to Kathy earlier about this and some of the PPACG staff, is that we get recommendations and we say recommend or not recommend, and we pass that up to the board. And the board's composed of elected officials from all the local entities and everything. And one of the things that I know, if what I do where I work at, if my people disagree with something, I want to know why, because maybe I missed something at my level. And I know I've been informed about PPRTA that they do and everything is that the chair or representative of the CAC goes before the board meeting. And what they do is they say, here's, we approved this, we recommended this. It was a 8-4 vote. The 4 people that voted not to approve it, these were the reasons, the concerns and issues. So we help educate our elected officials of the concerns they may not be aware of and help them make better decisions. And from the aspect of maybe we need to adjust and change policy because the PPACG staff does what the elected government, the elected officials on the board direct them to do. And so from that aspect, I don't think it's formally been introduced, but by having a representative go forward, we could express our, hey, this was a great project. Here's its strengths. This is dynamite. Keep it up. And here's some weaknesses why some people didn't support something. And we need to correct that somehow. An example in the past comes before of public process with some waste projects. Basically, they weren't aware of them or something of that nature. And that's a concern. So what I'm not sure how to bring this forward to do, but I think it would be very beneficial for us to present in a way through our representatives at the PPACG board, the concerns and issues we have of anything that we have issues about that need to be fixed. And also if we're doing something right, to let them know we think they're doing it right, so they keep doing it. And so I don't know if this has been formally adopted, but it's soft. It's not documented in writing, but it's documented from the heart of the people that are presenting it to our elected officials so they can do a Q&A if required. And I'm just curious if this is already being done. I probably wasted 2.5 minutes of your time. If it's not being done, I think it might be very beneficial.
Comment on that a little bit too.
Okay.
Jim Godfrey is the chairman of PPRTA. And what he does at the RTA meetings is he gives a brief recap, explains why votes were done the way they were. Otherwise, you're depending on the elected people and the actual board to read minutes. They're so busy, they may not read the minutes. So our thought process was, and Jared had a great idea of bringing it up for us, is having me, Welling, Miley, or a representative show up, tell the board, okay, here's a recap of what we did. Here's why we voted the way we did. They're still going to do what they want to do, but it's kind of giving the in-person, versus just hoping they read the minutes. So. Sorry,
This is Ann. I think that's a good idea.
I like that idea too. It sounds like though that the board is the one that would have to decide if they're going to let us be on their agenda.
Absolutely.
So maybe what we're doing is requesting to get on their agenda.
Correct.
The ability to present the concerns, issues.
Or even if it, like you said, it might not be concerns. It might.
Job well done.
And now the boss speaks.
I will say that we do, when we have issues that go forward to the board, we do often have, or not often, but occasionally we have, for instance, the chair of the TAC who will come and will answer questions if the board has them. We have not had a CAC or a TAC or other committee members speak directly to the board as a report since I've worked here. But I see John standing up there, so I'm assuming he has some things to say.
Yes, sir.
May I, Mr. Chair? Thank you.
Please.
So I've been here at PPACG a little over 5 years, 5.5. If I was a 5.5 year old, I'm this many, right? Initially, prior to the pandemic, there were all of the committee reports, and we would ask the chairs to come up and give a report. So this actually happened prior to the pandemic. After the pandemic, it was one of those things where, okay, now that we've started meeting in person again, those committee reports were a little bit of a casualty of wanting to have very on time, in sync meetings. We were having meetings that would start at 9 and not end till 12. For elected officials, they were like, okay, we need to make sure that we somehow keep that brief. So one of the things was we continued to just have them be written reports. That being said, I'm happy to talk to Andy Gunning, our executive director, as well as our current chair, Mayor Thompson of City of Fountain, and see if they're maybe not on a monthly basis, but a rotational sort of quarterly sort of report. That being said, to exactly what Danelle had said, there are two things going on, right? There's your committee meeting and your report. However, there's the actual items that you've discussed that go on to the board. And so if we have a split vote or something at the board, that is mentioned in the memo. And then more often than not, in fact, I want to say that I think it's always brought up if there's a split vote. If we did not come to consensus, we would say, and by the way, TAC did not voted for this, but it was a 7-3 vote, and TAC was a 9-2 vote or something. If we don't have consensus, we usually bring that up during the staff report. In fact, I want to say we always bring it up during the staff report, but I'm sure somebody will be like, I can remember this one time, and then I'll look like an idiot. So, but for the most part, during the actual items, we're taking care of that. And then there's the actual sort of report. And if you've been here 6 years, you can remember back when we would actually have the chairs show up. I think it's a very valid concern. Again, we are responding to the time constraints of the agenda that have been given into us to the board. But that being said, we're happy to, I'm happy at least to talk to Andy and to Mayor Thompson and say, hey, here's a committee that's doing a lot of great work and would like to at least, and again, I'll say that you want to be at every board meeting, but if that doesn't happen, at least maybe quarterly or something. But I'm happy to relay that. I don't think it's an unreasonable concern.
Even be feasible if we're there, and there may be some months where we don't need to say anything. But if we're slated to be available.
I don't know. If there's a microphone, I always feel like I need to say something.
But no, if you could check with Andy and Mayor Thompson,
we can definitely
next month let us know the direction we should take.
That being said, obviously, again, as part of our public process, if there's ever an item that you feel strongly about, you're welcome to come to the board of directors meeting. And just as Jared does here, he says, is there anybody in the room? And if you show up and come and say, hey, I'm Bob and I'm on your CAC, and we had a very spirited discussion about this, and you should know that there were some of us that didn't do that. Again, this is America. You can do that, right? They don't get that kind of public participation in other countries, but here you do. So take advantage of it. And just like Jared does here, you don't even have to be here in person. He can say, if you're not a member, raise your hand and he'll take you off mute, and you'll have the opportunity to do that. That being said, friendly advice, you don't want to be that person that shows up at every meeting and has something to say about everything. It tends to lessen the impact when the board members see you get up. That's when they start rolling their eyes and they're getting something to drink. But that being said, if you only do it once in a while, I think they do care and they do want to listen and they will pay attention.
Okay.
Was that helpful?
Very much.
That's good. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, any other comments, announcements? Is your hand up, Judith?
It is.
I thought it was.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to let everybody know, as someone who lived through graduate school in Los Angeles, which is a car-dominated place, very concerned about the increase in fatalities in Colorado in general, in Denver and Colorado Springs particularly. And a colleague who's on the city's Transportation Advisory Board is having an event on Saturday at City Hall at 10 o'clock. And they're presenting information about all of the local fatalities from the past year. They'll have members of the family there. They'll have information on where the fatality took place and who the person was who's killed, kind of to raise awareness of how the fatalities continue to increase. And an issue that the league brought up well over 10 years ago that I'm hoping we'll bring up again next year is the interesting intersection of air quality and drive-ins and drive-throughs. And this is of particular interest to me because for 10 years I taught food, health, culture, and community at UCCS. And so we are known, you may know, we are known as Fast Food Nation Capital, book that came out in 2004 for all of the hamburger joints that we have, which are almost always drive-in and drive-through. And we brought up that at least 10 years ago that represented an air quality issue. And I have the good fortune to live close to our city traffic engineer, and they're more concerned about addressing this issue, not so much for air quality, but you may have noticed if you pass some of these downtown, I probably shouldn't mention the name, one of them's a coffee facility, that the lines can be backed up for several blocks and they're actually parked on the sidewalks. So for them, it's a traffic safety issue. But I think it's one that we should all be more aware of because we have an unusually large number of fast food establishments, which are, by the way, not particularly healthy, but they're also an air quality issue and a traffic accident issue. So just something to consider for the future, since we are concerned about traffic issues. Just wanted to bring that up.
Okay, thank you. Janelle.
Just wanted to mention, I think we had talked to CAC a little bit about how one of the safety initiatives we were tracking was applying for a safety action plan grant for both the region and for Colorado Springs. PPACG worked to coordinate that application with the city of Woodland Park is actually the lead applicant, the project sponsor on that. And Colorado Springs applied for it separately. Both of those were awarded. So there will be safety action plans kicking off soon in all of the COG area. So
Good. Good to hear. Anyone else? Okay, on our schedule for next month, anything you need to comment on that?
I did just want to point out, right now we are scheduled to meet with the CAC on December 27th. I know that can be a difficult time period for a lot of people to attend meetings. And I know that we have opted to actually not hold that meeting in the past, which is an option if the CAC decides not to meet. If that's the case, those items that would come to the CAC will still go forward to the board if they're time sensitive. Right now, I believe we have an action item for recommendation for the freight study and also a recommendation for the tip to open a public comment period. And those are the only two action items that I'm aware of right now. Another option, I think we did this last year, was to have a virtual only meeting, not here in the office. So if anybody has any comments on that, if you'd like to make a recommendation or just email me with your preference, happy to take that into advisement and then discuss with the officers.
Yes, considering the timing on it, virtual might be the best route. I don't know if any other comments, but that's my opinion.
I've been in favor of virtual only.
Yeah, Roland Rainey at large, I concur with that. I think a lot of folks probably are traveling and out of state, and at least virtually, we're still connected in some form or fashion.
So you can't get out of it.
I'm on the other side of the world that day.
Get up in the middle of the night. Right.
I definitely concur with that assessment.
If you want, we can take a motion. That way Danelle has it down if you're interested in doing it virtually. Kathy?
I move that the December meeting be held virtual only.
Well, in Clark, El Paso County, second.
Any additional discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
No? Jared, you get to work. Okay.
Bring us cookies.
I could do that. Okay, okay.
Bring you a candle.
If there's nothing else, we will be adjourned then.